Hey, what's happening? It's Bill Smith. Now, recent reports have vetted or begun to vet rumors online about figures such as Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg. Now, we had a large conversation about a year ago when the Pizzagate stuff came out, but that's been, the mainstream media has said that that's been debunked, because of a shooting and it's dangerous. I don't know if it was ever debunked, though. I know we just had the shooting. They say it's dangerous to talk about this. I don't know. YouTube has claimed that it's not right to talk about this, and you shouldn't be able to discuss newsworthy issues in the world that hundreds of thousands of people are interested in within just a few days. YouTube has been working with places like ABC News, CNN to help them push their content from the TV onto the internet. So what they'd like to do is make sure that you can't discuss pertinent facts about things that other people have said. Essentially, it's difficult to get an official police investigation without some mainstream media reporting or some public knowledge of the event. That's the purpose of the press. And recently, people have begun to say that if you're not paid to do this by someone that they've deemed an acceptable channel, such as the Washington Post or the New York Times or CNN, then you should not be able to tell people about things that you have found that are written and documented online that talk about all this stuff. So here's an example for you. This man's name is Crispin Glover. He played Marty McFly's dad on Back to the Future. And he penned an essay back in 2003, before the internet was big and before people had cell phones in their pockets. Now, in this essay, he suggests that Steven Spielberg is, quote, appreciated the sexuality of young boys. Now, this is a Hollywood actor he's not an A-lister, but he's been involved in the Hollywood scene. He's been an actor since the 80s. And he's worked with directors like Spielberg. He knows him personally. And he penned an essay that says Steven Spielberg essentially has pedophilic tendencies. This has been well documented. This is on squawker.org. It was posted on November 10th, 2017. So that was right around there's a lot happening right around that time. I'm going to read you parts of the article just so you can understand. The article is very long, so I won't get all the good stuff. There's good stuff in here. It says, the brutal reality of sexual abuse in Hollywood and among the social elite came to the attention of the world in the person of Harvey Weinstein. Upon the global exposure of Weinstein's sexual victimization of at least 13 women who were interviewed during a 10-month investigation, a dizzying flurry of sexual assault allegations were quickly uncovered against various prominent social figures. Seth Rogen, Kevin Spacey, and a slew of Silicon Valley businessmen were quickly put under the spotlight of the media and were accused of various sexual crimes such as rape and pedophilia. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the current sexual scandal discovered among the social elite is that the earliest instances discoverable stem from the early 1990s. This, of course, infers that all these crimes against sexual victims has been going on. It's an ongoing phenomenon. It's been going on for decades without being exposed. And the scariest part of Weinstein's exposure is not that he is a sexually repugnant human being. Rather, it is an onslaught of witnesses and testimonies that were easily kept quiet for years before finally being discovered by the public. So with these recent cases, more and more the public eye is willing to offer more speculation and less trust to influential social figures they once had. Hollywood, to an extent has been stigmatized, and a dubious sense of having been lied for decades to has been embedded in the minds of millions. In recent months, the scandals that have emerged out of Hollywood can be considered to be nothing less than a betrayal. And now, after so many witnesses, documents, and other damning sources have been revealed to the public by investigators and the media, yet another piece of the sex-crazed puzzle has been brought to light by the internet. American actor and director Crispin Glover, best known for his role as George McFly, Marty's father, in Back to the Future, published an essay in 2003 titled, "What Is It?" Simple question. The essay shared the name and provided a subtext for Glover's 2005 film of the same name. The essay is essentially a cultural analysis that asks a plethora of questions revolving around the general ethos and context, keeping up the pioneer of Hollywood, Steven Spielberg. The following is a transcript of the essay. It's a little long. I'm probably not going to read the whole thing to you, but he asks a whole lot of questions. Is this culture a Judeo-Christian culture? Is forgiveness a quality of Christian ethos? He brings up a lot of stuff. He said, didn't they target Christians? Weren't they accused of being Nazis? Wasn't one of them Jewish? Wasn't one of them an honor student? If these fellows are staying crazy and staying different and thinking on their own, they were perhaps manifesting a countercultural ideal. Talks about school shootings, Sigmund Freud, and brings up Steven Spielberg. It says, does Steven Spielberg hold the same values I wish upon myself? Does the mind of this grinning, bespectacled, baseball-capped man entirely reflect this culture? Brings up how Orson Welles asked Steven Spielberg for some money. He wanted Steven Spielberg to invest in a film, and Steven Spielberg refused, and then later bought a prop from one of Orwell's movies for a huge sum of money. So Steven Spielberg maybe admired and hated Orson Welles for some reason. Do Steven Spielberg's passions burn? Do passions burn in the man now imprisoned who wished to anally rape Steven Spielberg? Do our cultural mouthpieces confidently inform us that the wish to anally rape Steven Spielberg is a bad thought? Could anal rape of Steven Spielberg be simply the manifestation of a cultural mandate? I have no idea what he's talking about. Do you believe Steven Spielberg is an ideal, an influence for our culture? Do Steven Spielberg's films question our culture? What do Steven Spielberg's film question? Does Spielberg focus much of his fantasy life on young people? Did he portray children wallowing in sewers filled with fecal matter in Schindler's List? Won an Oscar. Did he use children to finger paint an adult in Hook? Peter Pan stuff. Does he collect the illustrations of Norman Rockwell, such as the ones showing a young boy in his underwear examined by a doctor? Are the inclinations of Steven Spielberg above suspicion by the media-fed culture? Was he friendly with Michael Jackson? Wasn't Michael Jackson? Weren't they associated with each other? Do Michael Jackson and Steven Spielberg share similar opinions about the sexuality of young boys? Did Joseph Goebbels popularize certain ideals to the mass culture? Does Steven Spielberg attempt to do the same? Is celebrity more special than actual truth in art? When you join in a conversation with strangers, do you openly discuss any idea whatsoever without fear of conflict? Fear of conflict, did I say that right? Or do you restrain yourself from discussing certain things for fear of offending people and then becoming an outcast? What's up, Kappy? Probably will never work in Hollywood again. Isaac Kappy. Are there laws that deem certain forms of thought as bad and wrong? Is it difficult to discuss Tom Hanks in a bad or wrong way? Is what is now termed hate a form of thought? That is a very good question, posed to by a Hollywood director to the American people. Is what is now termed, quote, hate a form of thought? Can you think freely? Does our culture consider it acceptable to have a minstrel represent a black person on film? Does our culture consider it acceptable to have a person of average intelligence represent a retarded person on film? Why is one thing questionable and one thing acceptable? Did Adolf Hitler entertain any good thoughts? Was Shirley Temple sexy as a young woman? Shirley Temple was a child actress. I'll cover Shirley Temple sometime. What if you wish to express these ideas? Can people sue you for expressing ideas, particularly if they're blamed for inspiring behavior considered antithetical to cultural norms such as pedophilia, child molestation, child pornography, Hollywood, the sexualization, the normalizing and sexualization of children on places like Disney and Nickelodeon through cartoons like Rick and Morty? Would the cultural mainstream ever silence or suppress Steven Spielberg? Has the United States government given the immensely wealthy Steven Spielberg millions of dollars to fund a media project that reflects his religious heritage and his cultural beliefs? Does the Talmud speak of the superiority of the Jews and the inferiority of other cultures and beliefs? Does Steven Spielberg reflect this religious imperative? Is Steven Spielberg neurotic? Is this belief hidden and suppressed? If one discovers that everything one has been taught to be good is actually false, what then? At what point is one neurotic? Are we fed massive cultural propaganda? Are we infused with the belief that we act as we wish and do what we want? Are we not simply believing what cultural propaganda suggests us to think? Do you like MTV? Do you like Steven Spielberg? Do you like post-punk rock? Do you like trip-hop or rap? Do you define yourself according to the music you listen to? Do you consider yourself a true lover of music because you are in a rock band or because your boyfriend is in a rock band? Do you like tattoos? Do you like body piercing? Do you believe that love, kindness, compassion, recycling, and equality will save this culture from its woes? Do you? Is that what you think? Is it considered career suicide to question Steven Spielberg if one is involved in the entertainment business? If one is not involved in the entertainment business, is it considered a social suicide to question Steven Spielberg? If these things are so, what does that point to? What does this mean? Freedom of expression is actually curtailed in our culture by certain social pressures. Is calling someone a fascist in American culture today the counterpart to saying someone was a communist during the Joseph McCarthy era of the 1950s? Does our culture congratulate itself for taking interest in the lack of original ideas personified by the name of Steven Spielberg? Do his films take chances or take risks in order to amplify, charge, or challenge the cultural thought process? Does Spielberg take risks, or does he simulate the idea of taking risks? When Steven Spielberg clutched his Academy Award for Schindler's List, saying it's for the, quote, 6 million, was he speaking of a quantity of people killed or the quantity of dollars poured into his bank account? Till next time, this is Bill Smith. Thanks for watching.